My name's Inger. This is Rosie. Welcome to Be Free Yoga. Today's buzz is all about body image. I feel like this is a relevant topic for yogis everywhere because every time we enter a yoga classroom, we're surrounded by people with different bodies, different stages of life, all trying to assume the same postures. This can lead to comparison and sometimes judgment about oneself. Additionally, we encounter this off our mat. That's one of the things I love about yoga. Whatever we practice on our mat, we can take with us into our daily lives, because really yoga is about everything we do. But when we leave our yoga room, we end up encountering billboards and magazines and social media, all depicting this ideal body type, which is not actually physically attainable for most of us. And yet we spend a lot of our lives working towards it. So I just want to take a look at that today. A big part of yoga is treating our body as a temple. This is reflected in some of the limbs of the 8-limbed yogic path. 2 that come to mind are Saucha and Brahmacharya. In Saucha, we're instructed to keep our body clean like a temple, a healthy diet, a healthy form of movement so that our energy can flow freely and it will help our spiritual practice. In Brahmacharya, we are pointed towards moderation, so not going to extremes in either direction. I think of both of these as great indicators of how we can bring yoga into our life around eating habits, exercise habits, and our body. It's important to be healthy, but it's also important to allow yourself treats and to avoid the extremes of depriving yourself of nourishment or using food or exercise as a crutch to avoid issues that maybe you need to deal with or look at for your spiritual growth. But what if we do all the things we're supposed to do? We move our body, we eat a healthy diet, and our body still doesn't look like the societal ideal, which is very likely. What do we do then? Well, all women in our culture, I think, have some form of self-loathing about some part of their body, and more men than we realize. I cringe when I think about the amount of time I've spent in my life thinking about my body or being dissatisfied with some part of it or working towards changing it. What an immense investment of energy that could be used elsewhere. I'm guessing a lot of you feel the same way too. But rather than being consumed with regret, we can look at how to move forward. One of the things to notice is that as consumed as we are about this topic, we're also embarrassed to be consumed by it. And this is symptomatic of the problem. This is a universal struggle for women, and yet we consider it to be trivial and unimportant. I think that reflects the root of the problem, how we view women in our society. We start the day wanting to be healthy, feeling pretty good about ourselves, and then as we encounter people, social media, outside influences throughout the day, by the end of the day, we find ourselves back in self-loathing. We experience our mind and our bodies as separate entities, and the mind's job is to control the unruly body, which is kind of the opposite of what yoga teaches us, which is acceptance and surrender. So again, this spiritual path can help us function in our daily life. Our emotional state tends to fluctuate with our weight. If you're like me, you've probably experienced times where you felt really good in your body, maybe lost some weight, moving more towards the ideal that's set up for us, and so you're buying new clothes and feeling good and taking on the world, feeling kind of sexy. And then other times you put on some weight or you're not quite as fit as you'd like to be, and you're hiding in oversized clothes. It sort of like pervades your whole day and how you interact with other people. But we can pause and ask ourselves, who made up this ideal? There is proof that it is arbitrary and imposed. One thing is when we look back at ourselves as children. As babies, we were fascinated with our bodies. You explore your toes and play with your feet and wiggle around and don't spend any time at all disliking yourself. Additionally, we can see that standards of beauty have evolved over time. There were times in history when a more voluptuous body was considered desirable. Then other periods in history, you wanted to be super thin and flat-chested. And now we're supposed to be curvy and skinny at the same time with a tiny waist, but big breasts and hips. So yeah, how are we supposed to keep up? And also, it just goes to show that there is no standard of beauty that is universal. So we can ask ourselves, who is making up this standard of beauty? Well, first ask yourself, who's making the money? Our beauty is a huge multi-billion-dollar industry that profits by keeping us feeling insecure. So every time you buy a diet drink, or you go to the gym, or sign up for a new program, or exercise clothes, any of it, makeup, things designed to make us look and feel better so that we can have that life that they're selling to us. Who is behind that? Well, that's who is setting the standard of beauty, and that's who profits from keeping it changing and unattainable. Additionally, you can ask yourself, who wants control? As I mentioned earlier, by us struggling as women with our body image all the time, it keeps us from fully embracing our power, and that is to someone's benefit, but not to ours. That's for sure. So the problem is really not with our bodies, but with our attitude towards our bodies. I have a friend, and she and I were both at a phase in our lives where we were working out super hard, chiseling our bodies, trying to be really strong and fit, and we'd talk about it all the time. And then some time went by and I saw her again. I was like, oh, what are you doing to work out? And she was like, not much. She's like, I'm just doing yoga at home. I quit all my classes. And she seemed really at peace with it. And she was like, I realized I was working so hard to attain a small change in my body that you could really only notice with your clothes off. And I was like, oh, shocking, but exciting too. And anytime I hear a woman take an unusual stance like this about her weight and her body, I find it a little bit empowering. Like, can I think more like that too? My friend Lauren had a really interesting New Year's resolution. I'm going to read to you what she said about it on social media. My resolution last year was to get fat, to once and for all let go of this silly notion that the purpose of life is to be skinny. So I vowed to start enjoying life and use this short time on earth to experience more pleasure and stop devoting so much brain power and emotional and physical energy into something so trivial as being skinny. It's been a wonderful experience. I've made significant progress in being true to myself. I've learned not to abandon myself. I've learned to listen when I'm hungry and actually eat, instead of denying myself precious energy. Every day I feel better in my own skin. I love that. And if you have a strong reaction to hearing the resolution that she was going to get fat, it's a really interesting thing to look at, the strong reaction you might be feeling. But anyway, we maybe could just buck the whole system, shift the paradigm, and decide what our own aesthetic ideal is for ourselves, which may be changing. And it could be based on our natural body type, our personal style, and our unique bodies. So how do we do this? One step is to start practicing critical awareness. When you go about your day and you encounter messages and images from popular culture or from other people, Stop and ask yourself, is this real? Does this represent the kind of wholehearted living that I value in my life? And who is benefiting from making me feel this way? We can learn to embrace the cycles of our days and our lives. As women, we may have menstrual cycles wherein our body changes. Maybe sometimes it's plumper and rounder, softer. And as we age throughout our lives as men and women, changes will occur. Our bodies are very different when they're 60 than they are when they're 20. And that's the way it's supposed to be. So it'd be cool to come to peace with these natural rhythmic changes in our lives. There's a great video by Amy Poehler on YouTube, one of her Ask Amy episodes, and it's on our bodies. And she suggests that whenever you're feeling down on yourself, really critical of your body, to try and find some gratitude. Find one thing about yourself that you really like, that you can feel grateful for. It may be something like your strong teeth, or your beautiful hair, or your long legs, or whatever it is. Shifting your thought processes from being critical to finding gratitude helps you shift your perspective. So I can't tell you what the right weight and body type is for you. I can say that there are many women who are perfectly, and men, who are perfectly healthy in their bodies, but still experience self-loathing. So I think one of the biggest arguments about being thinner is that it's good for our health, but it's worth taking a look at that because it's not really all about that. And some of the health arguments regarding weight may not be as valid as you think. There are some scientific studies that show that the group of the populace with the most longevity, the longest lifespans, are actually the people that we consider 24 to 38% overweight. There are other studies that show in the absence of hypertension, weight is not a significant health risk factor. But one of my favorite studies is by Dr. Margaret McKenzie. She studied different cultures and their attitudes about their bodies. And one of the places she went was Samoa, where the inhabitants are often obese by our standards, 200 plus pounds, but they still lead a very active, full lifestyle with dancing, movement incorporated into their daily life, a healthy diet. That's just their body type. And you will not be surprised to know that 97% of them experience no hypertension, even after they've immigrated to the United States. The statistics remain the same, and it's because of their attitude about their bodies. So perhaps some of the health risks associated commonly with being overweight are not so much with regard to the weight themselves, but the stigma we attach and the shame that we carry around for disliking our bodies. To the, what extent this is true, how much of the ill health is related to the weight and the stigma, I don't know. But what I can say is, wouldn't it be interesting if we took half the mental, emotional, and physical energy we devote to how we want to look, to please society, and move that over to finding ways to accept ourselves? I have a feeling that would benefit our health as well. So I guess what it boils down to is finding ways to love yourself and accept yourself. I think yoga is a really great way to move in that direction. It doesn't mean that as we accept ourselves, it doesn't mean that we no longer work towards improving ourselves. In fact, the more we love ourselves, the more we'll want to make healthy choices for ourselves and our bodies, but they'll be coming from a completely different place. True growth, true change doesn't come from self-loathing. It comes from self-acceptance. So as you leave today and go off about your life or your practice on your mat, I encourage you to remember your true self, the divine spark in you, to be yourself and be free. Thank you. Have a great day.